not gonna be super mouth soundy. I turned the gain back down so you guys don't have to worry about that. Also, please ignore this split in the sea. I don't remember if I said it in my last video, but I tried to get this mic cover. There's so many hairs on it. Get off. I tried to put this mic cover on this mic, and it came off of my old microphone, and it just split right in half. So, I mean, it works. You can hear a whole bunch of my breathing, but it doesn't fit very well. So, I'm in the process of getting one of the furry ones that works a little bit better. So maybe I can do some like mic rubbing sounds too. Those are always nice. But today, the video I have planned for you is a reading journal review. If there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I love to read. I've been reading since forever. I learned how to read when I was like 3 and a half, 4. I don't really remember. My mom wouldn't even know. But I learned to read really early on, and I loved reading. I read my first chapter book. I think it was like The Magic Tree House. It was, I think, like the first or second grade. It must have been like the first grade. Second grade, I feel like you should be like reading, like full on, legitimately. But yeah, I kind of found my love for reading, like a real passion for reading in the 5th grade. I had a fantastic 5th grade teacher. She was awesome, and she had us read for 30 minutes every morning and put it in a journal. And I read Divergent, I read The Hunger Games, I think I read all of the Hunger Games books while they were still out. It was like 2014, so I think it was only like the original Hunger Games and like Catching Fire and maybe Mockingjay at that point. I don't know, but yeah, it kind of pushed me into reading all the time. So I've gone from, what month is it now? We just got into August. As of, let's look. When was the last time I finished a book? It's gonna take me a second to find. Okay, here we go. The last time I finished a book was July 18th, so I actually haven't read in a while. I've been really preoccupied with other things, but as of July 18th, I think I've read around 13 books from January 1st to now. So I love to read. I read all sorts of things. I don't like to say I'm on Book Talk because Book Talk gets a really bad rap, but I am kind of on Book Talk. I like to read books that are more on Book Talk. So yeah, that's kind of what I have for you today. This reading journal, it's called Clockwork Reader. Clockwork Reader. It was written by, I know her first name is Hannah. Hannah Azarong. Hannah Azarang. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm assuming it's one of the two, but yeah. It's written by her. It's really great quality. This reading journal is super sturdy. It's lasted me, I mean, I've only read 13 books, but it's gonna last me a really long time. The majority of the pages in it are journal pages, so I think I didn't look at how many pages are in here, but I'm assuming upwards of like 300 books. If you mark your books, this is perfect because it asks you a whole bunch of really specific questions. So you're able to kind of gauge how your annotating is going to be set up before you even start reading. But yeah, anyway, let's get into it. In this first page, it has all of the things that you're going to find in the journal. So things like your to be read list, your favorite books, your reading goals. She has a list of her favorite books of all time. She also has, I know there are other journals where you can journal like the movies you watch or the TV shows you watch, and she does book to screen. So you can get kind of rank how what was put on screen matches up to the book and what you liked and what you didn't like. So that's really cool. I really don't have any books that I've read recently that have done that, so I haven't been able to put anything in so far. Maybe I have, and I just don't. I haven't gone through this in a while. Like I said, this was like mid-July the last time I finished a book and put anything in here. But yeah, there's a ton to this journal. It's really, really cool. She gives you a sample page to go through and kind of look at how it's supposed to work. I'll go through my reading goals first. My reading goals. So, my reading goals for 2024. These have not been updated and I haven't added any more. So maybe after this video I'll reevaluate. My reading goals in 2024 are as follows. Step out of my genre comfort zone. I tend to stay in the realm of romance, specifically temporary romance. Stuff like I have a really hard time leaving that comfort zone, so that was my number one goal for this year, is to kind of step out of that. Read at least one nonfiction novel. I cannot stand nonfiction. I don't like nonfiction. It has to be like a perfect book for me to read nonfiction, so that's on my, I don't want to say bucket list, but it's on my goal. It's one of my goals for this year. I want to reread and analyze at least 2 books. That's going to be a little bit difficult for me to do because I have a hard time not skipping pages when I'm bored or when I know what's going on, so we'll see how that goes. I want to finish a series. I'm actually very, very close to finishing a series. I am 3 books into the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas, and oh my gosh, I'll get into it later. But yeah, I'm pretty close to being done with the series for this year. Read at least one Stephen King novel. One thing that you should know about me is I do not like scary things. I cannot stand scary things. I refuse to watch scary movies. I like the dressing up and eating candy part of Halloween, but I cannot do the scary part of Halloween. So the Stephen King part is gonna be a little bit difficult for me, but I think I'll get there eventually. My boyfriend's dad has a ton of, he has like a bookshelf full of Stephen King books, so we'll see how it goes. Read one classic and annotate it. I've read plenty of classics in the past, but I haven't this year, so I guess kind of keeping up with theme, kind of doing something that I don't typically do. The last time I read a classic was in like high school, so but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll change it. I mean, I did write it as a goal, so maybe I'll follow through. And then my last goal that I set for myself was read a self-help slash motivational book. I'm not super into motivational or self-help books, but it's always worth a shot. I haven't actually really read one before, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I have my reading stats and goals. So, as my reading goal, I wanted to read 20 books in 2024. I have a good feeling I'm going to surpass that. I've just been reading a lot of really long books recently, and they take me a while to do, so. Yeah, I have my to-be read list. My to-be read list. The majority of the books that are on my to-be read list, I've already read, so I'm not going to go through them. I'll just go straight to my first journal page. I switched the settings on my microphone so that you don't get like the binaural sounds, since I'm going to be kind of leaning over the whole time, and I don't want your left ear to get worn down. I know that's like my least favorite part of some ASMR videos, when they lean towards one ear and they don't move. So I changed it to mono speaker, or a mono mic, so you don't have to worry about that. I got you, boo. So the first book I read this year was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I know. It's kind of cliche. Some people don't like her books. I don't really understand why. She's a fantastic writer. I love her stuff. But I mean, I guess sometimes it can be a little cliche. So anyway, that was my first read of this year. Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. The narrators were Anastasia and Nathan, and the format was physical. I have a hard time listening to books, like doing audiobooks. I also have a really hard time reading them on like a Kindle. I just like having the paper book in my hand. I also really like going shopping for books. Sometimes I just kind of walk into like a local bookstore and just go, okay, what can I get my grubby hands on? So, and then I walk out with like 8 books, and I spend like $200. But it's always worth it. I always read them. So, I gave this book 4.5 stars. I started it on October 6th of 2023, and I finished it on October 12th of 2023, which technically wasn't this year, but it was the only book I read in 2023, so I figured I'd add it as my first book of 2024. It's a contemporary romance novel. It had 429 pages, and it was recommended by TikTok. That's typically the genre is contemporary romance. Again, something that I used to lean towards very heavily. It has 429 pages. It was recommended by TikTok. That's typically where I get my recommendations from, is TikTok. So, the first question is, what is your favorite quote? This is where the annotation side comes in. I was able to put a little, I like to call them flagpoles. So instead of going horizontally in the book with the annotation stickers, I put them vertically in like the middle of the page or in the very back towards the spine. I call those flagpoles. So that's how I mark my favorite quotes. My favorite quote in this book was toward the very end, and I'm gonna bleep some of the cursing, because yeah. But Travel Anastasia is the worst. Lists, so many lists. Nothing I do is trusted. All the bags had to be rechecked by her because my checks aren't as good as her checks. I love this duo. I love this duo. The way that Hannah Grace wrote Icebreaker is just phenomenal. Her character development is insane. Obviously, it's crazy. She's written Icebreaker, which had the 2 main characters, and then piggybacked off of the 2 main characters and wrote another novel, Wildfire, about their 2 friends who got together. So it's insane. Her character development is crazy. But anyway, where did you read this book? I read it on my father's couch. This is when I was still in college, and I would come home in between classes if I had like an hour and a half, 2-hour break in between classes, and I would just read like constantly. He'd be like, "Do you want to go get lunch?" I'm like, "No, I want to sit on your couch and read." And he's like, "Oh, fine, okay." So I read this entire book in how many days? 6 days. on my dad's couch. That's the only place I read it. The most memorable scene was the Uber scene or the Halloween bar scene. I won't go too in depth on it. I do want to have you guys keep in mind that this is not a kid's book. This is not a young adult's romance novel. So please be of legal age, of consenting age in your state before you read this. Sometimes you see Anna Grace's books pop up on the kids' shelves, and I'm like, no, don't read it. Because it gets a little raunchy. But yeah, the Uber scene was insane. The Halloween bar scene was insane too. Yeah, insane. Would I recommend this book and why? I said yes, but it's not for everyone, obviously. It's very reminiscent of a Wattpad fan fiction. If you like hot and heavy, this is your book. Anna Grace does not skimp on the spice, folks. She does not play with the spice at all. She never will. She never has. So, make sure you're into that sort of stuff before you pick this book up and think it's gonna be a cute, fluffy read. It's not. Some of it is, but most of it is not. What did you learn from this book? No. With this question, sometimes I have to be a little bit creative with the answer. So my answer to this question for Icebreaker was, I learned what the term "he was written by a woman" means. Because Nathan was written by a woman, Nate was written by a woman, but like in a sense of like the TikTok, like, oh, like he was written by a woman, like, you know, like the swoony guy. That's just who he's depicted as. So that's Icebreaker. The next book I have on my journal, in my journal, is Wildfire. This is another Anna Grace book. This is the sequel to Icebreaker. The narrators are Aurora and Russ, who you will be introduced to in Icebreaker. I had somebody ask me a while ago if they should read Wildfire or Icebreaker first, and I said Icebreaker. You can kind of read it either way, but you kind of get to know Aurora and Russ better in the first book in Icebreaker, when they're just kind of like background characters who are starting to like figure out who each other is, who each other are. I can't do English. It's just easier that way for me. I'm sure if you read Wildfire first and then went back and read Icebreaker, it would also make sense, but I feel like you wouldn't get the same amount of character context as you would reading it the other way around. Again, I read this in a physical form. I love my physical books. I love writing in books. I love marking books. I love having them on a big old shelf. I'll put a little clip in right now so you can see my bookshelf. But I love having physical books. I might have lied to you earlier. I did read more than one book in 2023. I started Wildfire on October 15th, 2023, and then I finished it October 17th, 2023. It only took me 2 days to read it. I'm sure I bought it at night, so I think I read it in about a day and a half. This is another contemporary romance, so if you like Icebreaker, you're kind of like Wildfire. That's just how it is. It has 386 pages, so this one's a little bit longer than Icebreaker, which, I mean, obviously it wasn't a hard read because I got through it in 2 days, so I wouldn't be worried. And this was also recommended by TikTok, obviously. So, my favorite quote was, "You've gone rogue, my man." I support it, because, yes, absolutely. I was in bed when I read this book, specifically my boyfriend's bed. I don't remember what he was doing, but he was sitting at his desk and I was just kind of laying on my belly on his bed, kind of like going the wrong way, kind of perpendicular to how you're supposed to lay, with my feet hanging off. And I just read and I read and I read, and he was like, "What are you reading?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." is for me Drunk Aurora by the Fire or Bookstore Flash Forward. So either the very middle of the book or the very end of the book. Typically that's how it rolls with me. I have a hard time remembering exactly what happened in the very beginning because it's more like character introduction, development type stuff, setting the scene, world building, all that good stuff. My readers know what's up. Oh, I didn't mention I gave this book 4.25 stars, 4.25. Like I said, if you liked Icebreaker, then I would definitely recommend this book. I highly recommend, obviously, that you read Icebreaker first, or you'll be lost. And I wrote that line right after I finished reading Wildfire, so I don't remember exactly why I said to read Icebreaker first, but it must have made sense to do it like that. I didn't like Aurora a whole lot. I just didn't. But Russ was good. I said he was the only reason I got through this book so fast. And the one thing that I learned from this book is, this is verbatim what I wrote. Oh my god, just communicate with your partner when you're upset. There was so much back and forth, misunderstandings happening throughout the book that I just couldn't do it. It was making me so frustrated. Oh my god, seriously, there were a couple times, I remember this very vividly. I would read a particularly infuriating scene where it's typically Aurora, where Aurora was just like not communicating and she wasn't asking questions and she was doing the whole don't look at me, don't talk to me, I don't want to talk about it thing. And I had to put the book face down. I turned around to look at my boyfriend and I said, "You've got to be kidding me right now." And then he kind of looked at me and go, "What?" And I'm like, "I don't want to talk about it." So, but all around, not the worst book I've read. If you were a fan of Wildfire, or if you were a fan of Icebreaker, you're going to be a fan of Wildflower. Wildflower. I can't speak. Wildfire. However, I would say that Icebreaker is right here, and Wildfire is like right below it. I would still recommend it. It's still a good book. It was a good read. Which is not exactly my favorite book. I am waiting for Daydreamer to come out. I think it comes out this month sometime. So I will be reading that, and I will get back to you because I'm very excited. But yeah, that was Wildfire. The next book I have on my journal, I really cannot talk today, is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. Oh Lord, folks, okay, here we go. The narrators are Wendy and James. Obviously physical format. I gave this 4.75 stars. Almost a 5-star rating. So, and with books, I typically don't give out a 5-star rating very often. I just don't. So, yeah. This is when we get into 2024. I read this on January 2nd, and I finished it on October 3rd. It is a dark romance novel. I'll get into that in a second. It has 319 active pages. With most of these books, they count the playlist page and the index and the the table of contents and the acknowledgement as pages. I don't count those, so it had 319 active pages. It wasn't recommended to me by anyone. I saw it at Barnes & Noble and I kind of just impulse bought it. It looked interesting. So, before I get into the questions, this is a dark romance novel based on the story from Peter Pan. So, when I say Wendy and James, it's Wendy favorite quote was, this is spoilers, so if you haven't read Hooked or if you're in the middle of Hooked, plug your ears, mute the video, okay? She doesn't know about her father, and that means she never betrayed me at all. That was one of those quotes where I went, oh, and like, I had to take a lap. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, that's insane. So, yeah, crazy quote, especially in context, oh my gosh. I was in bed and at my desk when I read this book. This was the first book that I read that I actually really annotated, like, where I had different colors that meant different things, and I was writing on them and actually annotating before I was putting, like, some notes in the margins, and I was, like, flagpoling a couple things, but that's about it. The most memorable scene for me was Wendy in the JR basement, or the dinner party. Again, might be a spoiler, but if you haven't read it, highly recommend this book. Highly recommend. Would I recommend this book? Oh my god, yes. That's what I wrote verbatim. It's like a spicy Grimm's fairy tale. I couldn't be near anyone while I read. What did you learn? I'm not gonna read what I said that I learned. But I do probably need to see a therapist. That is something that I wrote. So, the next book I have in my journal is Mountains Made of Glass by Scarlett St. Clair. This was my first book club read. I started like a mini book club. It lasted like a month. But this was a book that me and my best friend read together. Y'all. Okay, so the narrators are, I don't remember how to pronounce this name. I think it's Casimir. It's spelled Casamir. Casimir. I'll call him Cass. And, Gisela. Obviously in physical format, this was a novella. This was not a full-blown novel. I started it on January 7th, 2024, and I finished it on January 7th, 2024. This book was 5 stars. Oh my lord, y'all, I'll get into it. It is a fantasy romance. It had 213 pages. I don't remember if that's active or including the inactive pages. Again, this was just a random grab at Barnes & Noble. I think I got it at the same time that I bought Wildfire. But yeah, I just saw it and I was like, oh, that's pretty, so I bought it. So, my favorite quote. Oh, I love this book. My favorite quote is, I am Ella, Lady of Thorns and Keeper of Wings, wife of the 7th brother, and I have come to wish you only anguish. Oh my god. That's on the very last page. Which, I mean, I'm so sorry. Spoilers, but like, oh my god. That's like the best last page. Oh my god. Where was I reading it? Where was I when I read this book? I was on the couch or in bed. Again, I read it in a day, so I woke up, got a cup of coffee, brought the book downstairs, read the book on the couch until I finished my coffee, came upstairs, sat in bed for the rest of the day and read the book. Or for like an hour or two. 200 pages is like, it takes me like maybe 2 or 3 hours to read 200 pages at this point. The most memorable scene was Cass and Gisela at the willow tree. If you know, this book was insane. The plot was insane. The character development.
It's Friday afternoon. Celebrate the start of the weekend with your Alexa routine. Hope you have a good one.
My Alexa just went off. But the book was insane. That's all I'll say. words will be an act. Love can only be known if it is shown. Look at me go, I'm a little poet. Okay, so this next one is a doozy. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Haunting Adeline. I'll give you a moment to dislike this video. I had to read it. Okay, I had to read it. It was a must read. Everybody was saying it was so good, and they loved it so much, and oh my god, it's the best writing ever. So I had to read it. It's by H.D. Carlton. The narrators are Zaid and Adeline. Obviously, physical format. This book was heavy, y'all. It actually hurt my wrist. I started it on January 7th, 2024, and I finished it on January 26th. January 26th, 2024. I gave this book 3 stars. It's a dark romance, very dark, very, very, very dark romance. It has 583 pages. Again, can't remember if that's active or inclusive. And it was recommended by BookTok, obviously. Everybody on BookTok has read Haunting Adeline. So my favorite quote is, "Tonight, I'm just sad." This was towards the end of the book. Where was I when I read this book? I was in bed or on the couch, where I typically was. The most memorable scene was definitely the forest scene, or the Hall of Mirrors scene. I'm not even gonna, no comment. Would I recommend this book and why? I'm just gonna read exactly what I said, okay? No. This book was a lot for me. I had to put it down for a few weeks before finishing. Great murder mystery plot, but the romance was very hit or miss. Lots of unnecessary exposition. Girl, I was distraught. This book traumatized me. Read those trigger warnings and read them again at the very beginning of the book, because when I say I had to put the book down for a while, I had to put the book down. This book was putting me in terrible moods. Maybe I just can't distinguish reality and fiction when I read, but it was putting me in the worst mood ever. So I had to put it down. What did I learn from this book? Don't stay in an old mansion in the woods where your family was murdered, and definitely don't get spicy with your stalker. I used a different word, but don't have fun time with your stalker. That's not right. That's not okay. I put a little asterisk underneath it. I said, "Haunting Adeline is book 2. You'll have to pay me serious money to bother picking it up." I still have not read it. I do not plan on reading it. I don't think there's anything that you could say to me to get me to read Haunting Adeline. I'm gonna leave it at the first book and just let it be. Let it be what it is. Okay? No hate to H.D. Carlton. Your writing is fantastic. It just wasn't for me. There were points where I was like, wow, this is a really good book, but there were some things that just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. Anyway, what do we got next? Yes. Oh, okay. So, the next book that I had read is called If Love Had a Price by Anna Wong. This is in a third-person narration, so I put God as the narrator. Obviously in physical format. I gave this book 4.75 stars, so another high rating, another 27th, and I finished it on January 29th. So again, fast read. You can tell by the star rating. I liked it. It is a new adult romance with 353 pages, recommended by my brain. I bought this book in Ireland last July, and I don't remember why I picked it up. I think I finished the book that I brought to Ireland, and I needed another book to read on the plane ride back, so I picked this one up in a little bookshop in Dublin. When we were there, we stayed in a small little town on the coast, kind of south of Cork, for the majority of the time we were there, and then the last, I think 2 or 3 days we were in Ireland before we left. We stayed in Dublin to be closer to the airport. So yeah, that's where I got the book. Cute little history. So my favorite quote in this book is, "So yeah, here I am, rambling like an idiot for the past 10 minutes without getting to the point, which is that I love you. Hold a boombox over my head. Write you a love letter every day for years. Love you." I love that. I read this in bed. And the most memorable scene was definitely the Ferris wheel scene. I don't remember exactly what happened. This was a while ago. And one of those books that was kind of like an offhanded, I just need something to read. Which is funny because I didn't even read this book on the plane. I don't remember what I did. I think I slept the majority of the time I was on the plane home. But I read it in January, so would I recommend this book? Yes. It's so well balanced, and the dynamic between Chris and Nate is forced. I typically can't stand third act breakups, but this one actually made sense. Love this book. I only wish it were spicier. Like I said, I'm a romance girly. Okay, I like a little spice. There wasn't a whole lot of it. This was also one of those books where, it kind of pushed me out of my genre comfort zone. It was still romance, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I still finished it though. What did I learn from this book? After reading Chris and Nate's dynamic and how they explain love, I learned that I'm so lucky to have my boyfriend. And even though this story is fiction, it confirms my soulmate suspicion. So this must have hit home some way or another. I don't exactly how exactly it did that, but I do remember it was cute, so that's all we have to know. The next book that I have in my journal is Twisted Love. I kind of went on an Anna Wong kick there for a little bit. This one is interesting. So Twisted Love by Anna Wong. The narrators are Ava and Alex. Physical format. Again, I'm not gonna keep saying it, but I assume by now you know. This one got 4 stars from me. I started on January 30th, and I finished it on May 3rd. I don't know. It's a contemporary romance with 341 pages, and it was recommended by my best friend. She read the entire Twisted series before I even got to pick the first book up, and she said, "You need to read the series." So she gave me her extra copy of Twisted Love and said, "If you don't read this, I'm not gonna be happy." And I said, "Understood. I like it." But so I read it. Not very quickly, I think. In between Twisted Love, I think something about it bugged me, so I put it down and I finished other books in between. But yeah, my favorite quote was, "That's my girl. Hate me, don't cry for me, never cry for me. I'm not worth it." Excuse me. Okay. I was in bed, or in my bedroom. I remember sitting on the floor a lot when I read this book. But I was in my bedroom. I didn't read it anywhere else. The most memorable scene was the photo shoot scene. I remember that very vividly, so it was very memorable. this book and why. Yes and no. It's definitely a good read, but the whole Psycho in Disguise thing ruined it for me. This is also the absolute worst third act breakup I've ever read. I think that's why, because I was over the third act breakup. I had to put it down. What did I learn from this book? Go to therapy. Anyone, just somebody, go to therapy, please. Somebody. You don't have to even be real. You can be somebody fictional. You can be in a book. Just go to therapy. Please, God, go to therapy. Okay. So, the next book that I have in my journal is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I can't recall if it was pronounced Mass or Moss. We're gonna say Mass and assume that that's correct. The narrator is Feyre. Physical format. This book got like 4.99 stars from me. Really, really high rating. Not exactly 5 stars, but it was pretty close. I started this on May 5th and I finished it on May 14th. Like I said, I had kind of a reading break from February to May. February was when I started my new job, so I think I was more or less just trying to kind of cope with learning a brand new job before I picked up another book. This is a fantasy romance. Kind of. I mean, I have a hard time calling it a romance. It is a romance, but it's not your traditional romance book. Or maybe it is, and I read contemporary. Who knows? It's got 416 pages, and it was recommended by Book Talk. I saw this everywhere. My favorite quote. It's a conversation. Do you have a plan? No. That's it. That's my favorite quote. I thought it was hilarious. Where were you when you read this book? I read the majority of it in bed, but I finished the book in my office at work. Don't tell my boss. It's one of those books that get you sucked in, and if anything was taking my time away from reading it, I wasn't gonna let it happen. So, during my lunches at work, I would sit and read. I wouldn't even eat, I would just sit and read. I would get to work early before I was supposed to clock in so I could sit and read and have peace and quiet. I would clock out and sit at my desk and wait for traffic to pass so I could read. The most memorable scene was Fire Night and The Right. Those are two completely different scenes, but they kind of sound like they should go together. They kind of do, they kind of don't. Would I recommend this book? I really wanted to hate this book. Everybody was saying it was so good, and I put it off for so long. But I do really, really recommend this book. I recommend the series as a whole. I kind of wanted more spice as I read, but I don't think it even needed it. This book was perfect. It was written so beautifully. I like fantasy, but it has to be like spicy fantasy, like fantasy romance. This was more fantasy, less romance. It had like an undertone of romance. That was kind of her reason to be doing what she did. But I don't know. I don't really think that it needed any more romance than it had. What did you learn from this book? Love will transcend time and space if it needs to. I am so cute in these pages. I'm so poetic. Okay, so the next book I read is called Night Shift by Annie Crown. This was a generally recent read. Kendall is a narrator and obviously a physical format. I gave this book 5 stars. 5 stars. I started it June 5th, 2024, and I finished it June 6th, 2024. It is a romantic comedy with 3 noticed it, and the cover was really cute. And I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but I will judge a book by its cover, girl. I will judge a book by its cover. So I bought it, and it was really good. My favorite quote was, I don't know how much of this I can read. This was a kind of a raunchy book, but this is a conversation. You take off the cardigan, and boom, he's overcome with lust. You, on the floor of the Starbucks. You're hereby fired as my life coach. It's still funny. It was early on in the book, too, which I thought was awesome. I was in the bath when I started this book, so it was a little bit later at night, which is the reason why I didn't finish it. And I finished reading it in bed the night after. Yeah, obviously, adults working. Can't sit and read all day. Wish I could. If I could, I would. The most memorable scene is everything that happens after Kendall meets Vince at the bookstore. So, like the last 150 pages, all of it, everything that happens during the last 150 pages of the book, most memorable scenes. Would I recommend this book? I said perhaps it's the fact that I basically taught myself how to read on Wattpad. Very true. I started reading fan fiction at a very young age, probably too young. Probably way too young. But the utter filth and ridiculous butterflies this book gave me wasn't something I've experienced while reading any other book, which is very true. This is one of those books you have to put the book down and take a lap. What did I learn? It's okay to be an awkward loner bookworm just as long as it makes a sexy jock fall in love with you. Obviously, this book is not realistic. It is not realistic. But as a awkward loner bookworm, that's always been my dream. To romance the jock, which I did. Thank you very much. My boyfriend is a swimmer. But that's the dream, and I kind of got to relive that in this book. It was cool. And then I have a little crossed out section that I refuse to read to you, but it's silly and it's, flip the page up here. So, oh god, I might skip this, but I'll go over it. I'll go over it very briefly. The next book I read was from, I read this like in a couple hours. It was called The Dragon's Bride by Katie Roberts. It's a novella. It was an impulse buy at Barnes & Noble. I had some money laying around for books, so I went and bought a couple of her books. This was an interesting read. Very, very, very spicy. If you're not into that, please don't pick these books up. There are some trigger warnings at the beginning of these books, but essentially what Katie Roberts does in these books is she basically humanizes different monsters, different creatures. So The Dragon's Bride is about a dragon man hybrid. Let's see, what was the last, or the next one? I know I read another one of her books. I think it's called, shoot. It's up on my bookshelf, I forget, but the second one is about a kraken man. And then there is a gargoyle man and a demon. So, kind of interesting, very spicy, so please be warned. How many books do I have left? Oh, The Kraken Sacrifice. That's what the Kraken one is called. Let's see. So, the last book that I read, the one that I am very excited to talk about, is A Court of Feyre in a physical format. This book got straight vibes from me. Vibes all around. Vibes all around. I started this book on May 14th and I finished it on July 18th. Took me a while to read, but this book has 624 active pages, so it took me a second to read them. Again, another fantasy romance. My favorite quote is, "When you spend so long trapped in the darkness, you find that the darkness begins to stare back." You've got to be kidding me. Okay, that's like the best quote I've ever pulled from a book. Where was I? I was everywhere. This book took me a month to read, so it took me 2 months to read. So I was basically everywhere. At work, on breaks, on the couch, in bed, at my desk. Everywhere. I was reading everywhere. The most memorable scene was Feyre figuring out. This is a spoiler. Spoiler. If you haven't read Court of Mist and Fury yet, please skip this part of the video. The most memorable scene was Feyre figuring out her and Rhysand were mated. Oh my god. Because it's like they had like a budding romance, and then that like they got physical once or twice, and then boom, you're mated. Like you're meant to be together, like you guys found each other on purpose. And it's not that they just found each other, like Rhys knew about her, he could feel her since a long time ago. He had known of her existence and their mating bond, like their mated bond, for years and years. I think since she was, I don't remember what it said in the book, but I'm sure since she was like born, he knew that they were supposed to be mated. Like he's known. So it was cool to just see all that come together. Would I recommend this book? Yes, I would totally recommend this book. Yes, I would totally recommend. I've never had a book make me feel something like this one did. I was crying, yelling, awing, everything. It made me feel every single emotion, sometimes all on the same page. Honestly, in my top 5 books of the year, this was a fantastic book. I could not recommend this book enough. This is one of the books where, like, A Court of Thorns and Roses was good. And I'm sure A Court of Wings and Ruin will be great, but A Court of Mist and Fury was perfect. Literally perfect. It had every single element of everything you ever wanted. Oh, it's so good. It was so good. This actually might be one of the books that I go back and reread. Oh, it was so good. What did I learn? Finding love while finding yourself is hard, but not when it's with the right person. If you read the books, you know, with Tamlin and Rhys and the whole Feyre love triangle thing. So, obviously, Feyre had a hard time finding herself while falling in love with Tamlin. And her life was difficult when she was with Tamlin, but she found it to be a whole lot easier with Rhysand, and I think that's something to be said. Also, as a little side note, I wrote this. I said, Rhys is the most perfect man to ever exist. Obviously, he doesn't exist in real life, but on paper, perfect. He's the perfect man. A little bit scary, super sweet. He's got tattoos, you know, the whole bad boy package. you some without you even asking. But yeah, if there's a certain book you want me to pick up and read, if there's anything with books you want me to